Hello, everyone. This is actually my first Tech Alley. Too many people kept saying, come and show up, so here I am. So thank you for showing up. My name is Taylor Speegle. I'm a co-founder and managing partner at Wondour, and we're a design and development firm homegrown here in Las Vegas. I'm going to talk to you today about one of our amazing projects. And so the first project I'm going to talk about, or the one for today, is called Visionade. And this is one we actually developed ourselves rather than developing for one of our clients. And it's a pair of electronic glasses for the visually impaired. And so a little bit about Wondour. So we have been developing apps here in Las Vegas for coming on 10 years. A lot of the work of what we do is actually outside of the Valley. So I'm very excited to see that Tech Alley is here, and especially in the last 2-3 years, there's been this explosion, especially post-COVID. So I'm very excited about it. And so we focus primarily on building custom consumer-facing applications for anyone from small startups with barely an idea all the way up to multinational corporations. And so we've worked with TCL recently, their first ever wearable display. So TCL, I have their TVs hanging in my house. So we were actually their exclusive software partner to help them with their development program for their first ever wearable headset. We've also had the opportunity to work with Harvard Medical School on anti-aging research, have 20 million downloads plus across the applications that we've done, and really anything from websites or comprehensive web applications, mobile apps, and we've done a lot recently in virtual reality technologies, VR, Metaverse-based tech. And redundant, this is my face. It's beautiful. Thank you. A little more wrinkles. This was pre-having a toddler. And this is my co-founder, and he's actually the main originator of this idea. So we're partners in Wondour as well as in the Visionade project. And this is why we created Visionade. And so this is Dylan's grandfather. So Dylan is my co-founder. And he raised Dylan. We love him dearly, an early supporter of ours. And he suffers from macular degeneration, non-diabetic retinopathy, and atrophy in one of his eyes. And so over the last few years, he's now legally blind. And it's been really tough to see the tremendous impact that's had on his life. But we're excited to say with our first ever rough prototype of Visionade, he was able to read a restaurant menu and see the whites of his wife's eyes for the first time in 2 years in ways that other remedies just simply haven't worked. And he's certainly not alone. So the more we've dug into this, so diabetic retinopathy, so for example, if you have diabetes, you have about a 30% probability of having eye-related maladies associated with that. Glaucoma, this impacts hundreds of millions of people across the globe. And we've identified, based on early stage research from the likes of Johns Hopkins, upwards of 60 eye maladies that could benefit from a product like Visionade. And in the numbers, if you just take the 3 most common, which actually have the greatest probability of success with Visionade, that's over 20 million people in the US and over 370 million people across the globe. And the problem with a lot of the current remedies is you have eye surgeries, eye injections, and a lot of the times they first thing, they're expensive, they're invasive, so there are safety issues, and they ultimately can become ineffective as diseases progress, or actually just have gaps in what these remedies can actually do. And that's where Visionade ultimately comes in. And so, again, these should look familiar. These should not look like an alien piece of technology. These should not look like a pair of virtual reality glasses. And that is very much by design. So starting with form is they should be lightweight. They should be able to be worn for multiple hours at a time. We're initially targeting a 4-hour battery life. Additionally, they should look like a pair of glasses. So we actually overlaid the 50 most popular styles of glasses and sunglasses of the last 50 years, found the design path of least resistance, came up with these. We also have modularity, so you can actually change the style. And this is actually a thing that's often overlooked in medical technologies, right? People think, oh, well, somebody needs to be able to see, here is a big clunking headset that you can put on, and this might be able to help you. But if you actually talk to these people, they won't use them, right? They won't go out in public. They won't actually use the technology because no one actually thinks about the form element of this. And so that's why this was very important. And so from a form factor, we designed and engineered all this from componentry up. So this is a very achievable form factor. And this is a little bit about how it works. So in the front, you have one-way glass, and you have camera arrays and sensors on each eye independently. That image is then processed with computational ability in each of the lenses. That's then fed to a display, and then you'll see the piece that detaches from there is a folded array optic. You'll find those often in your virtual reality headsets, right? It's just bending the light so you can see the screen up close. And then lastly, an optional prescription lens they can utilize. And this creates the comprehensive system. And how that works, it works in a variety of manners. So take one kind of an easy to understand scenario is when talking to somebody with, we actually talked to somebody who had lupus, and the medication for that's not an eye malady, but the medication can completely damage the retina, retinal toxicity. And so with that, they can only see a spot, independent spot here in one eye, and a separate independent spot in the separate eye. It's not symmetrical. And so that's why things like independent eye manipulation of the image is incredibly important, because we can now take, if they have this component and this component in their eye, we can hone the probably about 100 to 120 degree field of view out of the gate. So about this, shrink that down into the spots that they can see and manipulate that image. We can manipulate colors, we can bring in the periphery, and that's a major piece when you have closed tunnel vision, is going out in a social situation like this is terrifying, because you can't see around you, right? The anxiety is palpable, and we've experienced this with the more people we've talked to with it. Additionally, a little bit about how the system works. We built it to be highly modular, and there's a lot of benefits to that. So one, from a manufacturing perspective, instead of having to wait 3 years and then you do an entire system overhaul, you can replace independent components. You can also specialize components for more various eye conditions. So we're choosing one universal model out of the gate, leading a lot on the software, but it's certainly not limited by that effect. And you can also, again, have aesthetic accessories like the ones in the upper left, right? Change your colors, right? Make it poppier, make it seem like more classic style. So we can swap all of those out stylistically as well. Business model for something like this. So there are a few early stage competitors that I'll kind of show you examples of. The market, we're shooting for a $3,500 price point. That is based on a variety of things, both competitors, comparisons against surgery. We do feel good about things like FDA regulatory approval, as well as insurance coverage through the likes of Medicare. And then this type of product is FDA Class 1, which is kind of the lowest hurdle for hardware. Basically just prove that there's some degree of efficacy and it's safe to use, which there's already benchmarks thanks to the competition in the marketplace. And the lower numbers that you guys can't see, so cost of manufacturing, that's a really interesting thing right now, and it's a moving target. Chipsets, people like Apple are coming in and buying out entire factories, and so the globe only gets what the factory can produce after 6 o'clock at night. And so what normally for componentry, you'd go out and source hardware, and you might be able to get everything and plan it out about 3 months. It's now 9 to 12 months to have all the independent componentry, which is a very difficult hurdle in the world of manufacturing. And from a competitive standpoint, so our first prototypes of what we've done was, this all started, because we were building one of our virtual reality applications, we threw it on Cornell, Dylan's grandfather's head, and his jaw dropped because he was actually able to see better clarity than he does in his day-to-day life, just by using VR. So then we did a quick demo prototype with a phone, basically a mobile app, and that does just direct pass through the camera, and running that through like a Google Cardboard. Right, and that manipulation alone helps to unlock additional facets of vision. And then on top of that, you can overlay more software elements to it. We've also done we have a 3D printer, we've done full ergonomics and viability testing on that piece. But we're still in the early stages, so we haven't actually gone through final prototyping and manufacturing for the product that you saw in the industrial designs. Some of the competition that's out there. So ours on the right is basically a simulation of what the end product would look like. And what you often see are the ones on the left, right? And so they're using VR headsets, like there's one at Pico out of China. We actually worked directly with them on another project. It has a singular, low resolution, low field of view camera that's about this, that's just in the middle of the VR headset. So you have a heavy headset with poor resolution and a variety of factors that make it basically unusable in the long term. This has not hit critical mass yet because there's these hurdles, in our opinion, there's these hurdles and barriers that are being put up by the technology today where adoption is simply low. We bought every competitor we found because we didn't set out to design a product like this, and then they were all very disappointing, right? I live in the world of tech. I couldn't figure out how to use half of them. Imagine your average 75-year-old demographic. And then from kind of as we go about any project, so we did a little comparison. So Idaptic is one of the leading, kind of our leading competitor, who we'd be going up against. So line item by line item, just tackling through, okay, what is their price point? What should our price point be? What is their field of view? What is their processing? What is their stack? What IP do they have? So we do have kind of a constellation of patents filed with the US Patent Office on innovations related to wearable tech that have broader applications and applicability to what VR, AR headsets we might see in the next few years, as well as those specific to visual assistance. And another piece we did going into a project is we actually scoured through all of Apple's patents. Sadly, at the most recent conference, they did not unveil Reality OS or any of their hardware, but we actually went through all of their patents, most recent filings, to come up with what we think the rendering of their Apple augmented reality, mixed reality headset would be, to understand where is their opportunity in the patent portfolio to be able to expand, right? Because we don't want to go through, spend a few $1 million developing a product, only to run up against a roadblock from a patent perspective. So that was part of the diligence that we did as prior to really digging in further in this project. And then kind of your standard from a pitch perspective, just the opportunity, 376 million people globally. Initially, we target US, so 20 plus million people there. And then when talking to a lot of ophthalmologists, it's difficult because you talk to, while there are people out there, you talk to 20 ophthalmologists, 2 might have heard of this research, which is dumbfounding because I've seen people cry by putting on really rough versions of this. And so they estimate at least 10% of, they feel comfortable, at least 10% of their group would be able to use it. And so that's what we're typically using for kind of our lowest factor of adoption. Revenue, when you're dealing with numbers like this, so top line revenue, obviously there's quite a bit of cost in the manufacturing side, but with a $3,500 price point, there are other revenue streams beyond the initial cost, subscription based and so on, but upwards of $7.7 billion top line revenue opportunity in this type of hardware. And hardware, if anybody is from the world of hardware, there's a lot of hurdles to get in, and once you figure out that pipeline, there is a fair amount of intellectual property and difficulty moat that you build around your IP. And a little bit of what the timeline would look like on this is kind of, as we broke it out, there's phase 1, phase 2, and scaling. So phase 1, 6 to 12 months, that's your rapid engineering, rapid prototyping, where you're building out all the boards. The board isn't this big to begin with. As you're running some of the software, you shrink that down. You do actual rough builds, like hand-built models of the prototype that you saw, and you go through that rapidly. Those prototypes are a lot more expensive than the end product. And then phase 2 would really be manufacturing, and we broke that line. So phase 1, you could allow for pre-sales. Phase 2, the capital requirements are quite extensive for being able to have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 units out. Largely because the manufacturing environment, you have to purchase some of these things 12 months prior to your manufacturing date. Again, because chipsets, everything is so backlogged. It's getting a little better, but not everywhere. And really, that's where we are today. So we're in the kind of early stages. It's one of our many projects we're working on, but we're very, very excited about it. And thank you so much for your time today. I will have my contact information at top. Always happy to chat tech with anybody at Tech Alley. This is fun to be here because I've been up and down the waves of kind of a tech community in Las Vegas, and most of our work is outside of the valley. So this is fun to see real faces. To the point earlier with COVID, all I see is my wife and my toddler, and I love them. But it's nice to see real people. And we're also hosting every 2 months, we host a Wondour workshop. Location may vary, but basically we talk about the world of tech, a lot like Tech Alley, but do a lot of Q&A, sit down, and make it very business applicable. We bring in some of our clients and what they've done, and really brainstorm and workshop through. So if you have an idea, we just sit there for an hour or so, and we can go back through and workshop, and we bring in various speakers as well. So if you're interested in joining, July 16th, 1 p.m., so next month at Whitney Library, you cannot read that, but text workshop to 702-602-8802. With that, I don't know if I have any time left, but open to questions.
What was the biggest thing you were surprised to learn as you're building the prototype? Clearly, when you show the differences, yours is a lot easier to use, there's a lot advances. Was it the first time you tried it on, or were some things that you were surprised to learn that you didn't even know was beneficial when you were going through this process?
So personally, I'll start with the idea. I have I don't really have family that suffers from any eye maladies. And so from this perspective, everything about learning about the industry, we've done a lot of work in medical, in the medical space, and really ophthalmology is its own segment, which is interesting. So it's kind of dental, ophthalmology, and then all of medicine. That's how kind of insurance companies think of it, and a lot of people think about it. So that's an interesting element to it where ophthalmology is often overlooked because it is segmented in a variety of ways. And so that's when talking to a lot of people, they feel left out, they feel underserved because there's, if you have a choice of technologies, you go for this broader piece, or a lot of technology companies will stay away from ophthalmology, and so you just have fewer dollars flowing through. So that was really just kind of disheartening in the beginning, but then optimistic after the fact, just knowing that there was actually practical ability to be able to help on various stages. Yes?
You mentioned a 4-hour charging battery life, which basically means you're waiting for silicon nitride batteries or something else to be out in the market yet. In the meantime, have you considered using something like ultra capacitors and just accepting 30-minute runtime with a recharge time in seconds? That could be done with existing technology today.
Yeah, and I think really the main thing in talking with people is their extended use. So this will have a battery case, so we do have designed a battery case that they can carry around with them, just like a sunglasses case. So that type of tech I'm intrigued by, but really the biggest thing is we want to make sure that nobody's stranded. We want to make sure we kind of build clear constraints and a long enough battery life so that when somebody goes out into the environment, the average thing is around their house or a social environment, that we have at least a baseline of battery life that's extended. Because there are, we could build a mobile application with this, with lower resolution, actually better battery life based on just leveraging iPhone tech. That's, I'm happy to chat further on it if you have kind of a good understanding or kind of a nice use case for us. Yeah?
I guess I have a suggestion for you. I'm not sure you have, I'd recommend speaking to the VA. Most people that are younger, say with problems with their eyesight, definitely would be VA. And I think it would be easy contract to get with the government. And I think they'd be much more tech savvy. So I'm saying, I'm not sure you're thinking about doing anything like that, because I know a lot of veterans that can benefit from this.
Definitely, and we've actually spoken to them. So one of our other projects that we've worked on is in negotiations with the contract with the VA. And so through that same channel, we kind of early stage, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And there's excitement at the early stages. Obviously, it's a process to be able to get through there, but it's definitely one I completely agree with that. That's great advice.
So even though this idea is very good for people experiencing these types of disabilities, for people in like the mid-range salary, this price point is pretty steep, even though it's worth it. Will there be any like financing options provided, or is it all at once price?
The idea is to allow financing options with some sort of interest rate, so using a third party probably to source that, as well as we're optimistic, but obviously can't guarantee about coverage from Medicare, Medicaid through the target segment that we're looking at. But again, the insurance landscape for ophthalmology is its own world. So with the competitors that are out there, very few actually are able to get any sort of insurance coverage on that. So it's something that we try to keep a lean enough margin. We're actually coming in $1,000, $2,000 below, in theory, if everything could be executed, what we think the market could bear and is bearing currently, but that's a very, very good point, right? Affordability and mass distribution and knowledge, because that's the biggest thing, is there's just not enough people even understand the current technologies that could vastly help them today. Okay. All right. Oh, go.
I was just wondering, and it might be half question, half pitch, maybe we could talk after this, but so I have a childhood buddy of mine who has retinitis pigmentosa.
Okay.
And he's also a professional skateboarder, which is kind of crazy to think about because it's such a fast-paced action sport, right?
Yeah.
What does, so question side, like what does testing look like on this? I saw retinitis was on there. What does the testing look like to prove that this would work for someone like that? Or even like what that individual would go through to make sure, to her question, that they don't spend $3,600 to realize maybe it didn't really help them out as much. How do we make sure that's like the right product for that individual? And then second half later, if you wanted to connect, he's a really good dude and he loves supporting anything that supports visually impaired progression. We should talk more. I'd love to connect to that guy.
Absolutely. And to answer, hopefully I can
Yeah.
go ahead and wrap that up. So on the testing front, so fortunately, because there are some predecessors that have come to the market, there is clinical research that has been done validating for retinitis pigmentosa. So that's one kind of confident piece. A few other strategies. So when you actually purchase it in advance, there is a return policy. So once you actually receive the device, there will be actually first thing, there's pre-configuration of the device before it ships, as well as once you have it, there is kind of over-the-phone support and remote telemonitoring kind of support for the device to be able to test that out in the marketplace today. Okay, thank you everybody.